So if we want to do it right, we understand that Yeshua was not keeping the Passover with his disciples. It's ludicrous. It was the 14th. The next morning, when he was being tried in Pilate's judgment hall, the religious leaders refused to go in the judgment hall because they didn't want to be defiled so that they could eat the Passover. Has the Passover happened yet? Have 250,000 lambs been sacrificed yet? Is Yeshua going to sacrifice a lamb in the gate of his own city and have a special Passover lamb that we don't even hear about at the Last Supper? We hear about bread and wine. There's no lamb there because it's not going to be done till the next day. He's eating artos, not azimon. Every single text in the Greek text says the same thing. And in the Hebrew Matthew, it says lechem. It doesn't say matzah. What do you want, people? Oh, I know, we want the Last Supper to be Passover because we just love the idea. Yeshua is the Passover lamb. That is the important thing. When that was done up on the Temple Mount, the high priest would then take that lamb and they would go into the priest's chambers up on the Temple Mount where a special oven was built for this, and the lamb was roasted upright. Now this is something that even the Pharisees admit in their ancient writings, and where we first ran into it was in Hebrew with illustrations all in Hebrew, wasn't even in English. In the city of Jerusalem, showing that in the second temple period, the high priest and everyone, they roasted the lamb upright. And so they had a crosspiece to brace its chest cavity open, and they took the entrails, like in Egypt, we were told to roast it with the pertinence thereof, but in the temple period, we took the intestines out and we put it upon the head of the lamb. So we're looking at a lamb on a cross, roasted upright with the crown of its entrails on its head. This is what everyone was seeing, that they were looking at as Yeshua was hanging on the cross. They were roasting these lambs in an upright position like that. Same way it's done in Mexico today. Same way it's done in Israel, down at the decks, roasting the lambs upright. And so they put the lamb to roasting, and then the high priest and his entourage of priests would walk over the Kidron Valley Bridge to the side of the Mount of Olives, still under the daylight, still before sunset, and they would bind together 10 standing shocks of barley with a scarlet cord, and then they would go back over the Kidron Valley Bridge, because now this was what was set aside as the first fruit offering. At the end of the weekly Sabbath, when the sun sets, then they go over the Kidron Valley Bridge, and when they go over the Kidron Valley Bridge, they then harvest the barley after the sun sets, and that is the first fruit offering. Finally, he said, take him away, crucify him. So there, Yeshua comes out of the judgment hall, and they put the wood of the sacrifice on his shoulders. Now has come to pass the fulfillment of the question that Yitzhak asked Abraham. Father, I have the wood of the sacrifice. It's on my shoulders. Where's the lamb? God will provide himself a lamb. You follow me. Now the Lamb of God, the Lamb of Yahweh, with the wood of the sacrifice on his shoulders, is led out the north gate of the city of Jerusalem, where Abraham had built an altar in stone and bound his son to the wood of the sacrifice. Now directly below that, in the roadbed down below, is a hole chiseled in stone. Yeshua is bound to the wood of the sacrifice, and there it is that the substitute has come full circle. There, the Lamb of Yahweh, with the crown of thorns on his head, is on a cross. And at the same time, the high priest in the temple, up on Mount Moriah in the priest's chambers, is looking at a lamb that is on a cross with its intestines on the head, that is marred by unbelief, is being roasted, and that is the Passover lamb. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you our salvation, the sign of our salvation, the substitute and eternal reminder of our salvation. Ladies and gentlemen, the Passover Lamb. Marred beyond recognition, beyond what any man had ever been marred before. He was ripped open from head to toe. The blood was dried upon him, a crown of thorns upon his head, and he then quoted this 22nd Psalm, starting, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Why are you so far from hearing me? And he then quoted the entire psalm because it is the picture of the crucifixion. My bones are all out of joint. My tongue cleaves to my jaw. I'm dried up like a potsherd. And they were all watching as that very thing that David wrote by revelation, seeing beforehand the coming of the Messiah, was there before their eyes. See, Passover, we knew that it was a shadow picture of something good that had happened in our past. We did not know that it was a prophetic shadow picture of good things to come. Because if we could have known that Yeshua, that by his crucifixion, that he would pay the death penalty for us, if we could have known it, Satan could have known it. And if Satan knew it, he never would have crucified the Lord of glory, because he worked right in to the plan of the Almighty for the redemption of the human race. And so it is by his blood, the shedding of his blood, that the payment of the death penalty was made, not just for Israel, but for the whole world. The very thing that started in the Garden of Eden, the transgression of Adam and Hava. And to cover for their sins, they sewed together fig leaves. Not good enough. The Almighty killed lambs and with the skins covered them, putting in place again the substitute, his covering, his plan to cover for the sins of transgressions. And so even though we were ejected from the garden, we will one day go back to the garden. We were ejected from paradise, but in the new heaven and earth, paradise is going to be restored. And there will be no more crying. There will be no more tears at that time. But until that day, we are not promised that there will not be tears, there will not be hardship. But there's no temptation taken us that is not common to man, but he is able to ekbano. He is able to hold us in his hands and keep us in the middle of all the trials of life. And coming out of Egypt was bitter bondage, but it was the picture of the price that Yeshua would pay. Blessed are those who enter the tent of Abraham in the name of our Messiah, Yeshua, the Prince of Peace. This will be a night, again, much to be remembered, to teach our children, to teach our grandchildren, to teach all succeeding generations that the Almighty has entered the course of human events and has interrupted the course of human events to make himself known to the entire world. That's why I said that nobody keeps Passover today. After the destruction of the temple, nobody keeps Passover. We celebrate Passover. Yeshua was our Passover who was sacrificed.